Am I on? Am I live? Or are we here?
Yes, you are.
Oh, good, good. Thank you so much. All right. Crawford, gotta pull him over. Da, 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 da. Uh, okay. So, so David, it shows your name over on the other side as well. Is that because you have a different audio thing, or I'm not sure what that's about.
Let me get out of the other one.
Okay, well, whatever. That's fine. And Crawford, you're declining. Okay, got it. Eric, you can do it. Eric, I have a picture for you that you'll get a kick out of that I'm going to show today.
What I what am I declining? I accept whatever you want me to accept.
Okay, got it. Looks like you're echoing or something, Crawford. I'm
Yeah,
not.
everyone's echoing.
Huh. Interesting. Okay.
Paul, am I only in there once now?
Yes, I think. Well, I just see on the attendee side, but oh no, I guess yeah, yeah, it is showing you on the what they call the attendee side. Okay. I don't know. I don't think it's a problem if I don't move you over. So that's basically it. Promote to panelists. I'm just busy promoting everybody to panelists. They all come in on that other, thing. Mick, here we go. Okay. And Steiner, are you able to get on okay? Okay. And then Crawford, you're okay. Crawford, you're on, right? Is that right?
Yep, I'm on okay.
Okay. I have to check out something very quickly while we're going on. Hey, John Jew, anything going on in the infectious disease realm that we should know about? We're going to have an interesting conversation next week about ticks and mosquitoes and mites from the CDC as well as Eileen, just as a heads up on that. And you remember Suzanne Visser from the CDC from Fort Collins from
Yes,
the yeah, she's going to be on
absolutely.
with us. She's doing better than ever before, and she's going to come on with us next week. So I thought you'll get a kick out of that. But
She's brilliant.
anything to report from your end?
Nothing new.
Okay, cool. Okay, good. I've got to look something up real quickly, so I'm going to try to do that. So I'm trying to see if someone else can sort of do some talking while I'm looking up some things here. Libby, that's what I wanted to ask. Tell me, things have been look worse than what you were telling us about last week. Although the dam didn't break, right? But tell us a little bit about what happened there and the circumstances. And it was just in Oahu. Was it on any of the other islands like Maui or
Yeah,
or
yeah,
what?
it was across the state. So they had the really bad weather about a week ago, and it was a unusual storm. They call it a Kona low because um, the weather system came from the south side. Usually, it comes from the northeast, and so different sides of the island were getting pounded. Lots and lots of flooding. They were worried about dam breaches. They had to evacuate a lot of places on the north shore of Oahu, and then it kind of settled down. And then a second round came through, and so the ground was already saturated. So I was actually out in Hana, Maui, trying to do some work out there, and they ended up closing all the schools and whatnot. So we just came back a day early, but just amazing waterfalls and flooding and roads getting washed out, trees coming down. So
Yeah,
thankfully, not too many people got hurt, but really catastrophic cleanup right now.
yeah. I just can't imagine. Just you've had some really nasty disasters out there, starting with the Lahaina fires and all that, and just it's just I'm so sorry. Hey, tell us a little bit about your if you don't mind, um, your um your governor, right? Is he he's a physician? Is he got was his training in emergency medicine? Is he or just ended up doing some emergency work and is a family practitioner? What's his background?
Yeah, so I think he's family medicine. I don't think he ever boarded. And then he was working, I think it was part of a payback school loan. So he was working in rural areas so that he would qualify for, you know, some of the loan payback. Um, he likes to say that he's an ER doc, but like really it's more of a clinic that would, he'd see about
Yes.
three or four patients in a 24-hour period on the Big Island.
Yeah. So has that actually been helpful to you in terms of understanding the needs and the public health needs and so on and all those kinds of things? Just kind of an interesting thing because I don't know of any other governors that were physicians. That's all.
Yeah, I think, didn't Oregon or Washington have physician governors?
It seemed maybe Oregon. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I get. Yeah, is
Yeah.
that right, John? Tell us who
Yeah.
that was.
John Kitzhaber. He was a good doc. He's I would say, quote unquote, genuine emergency medicine doc.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, got it. Well, anyway, so just so I'm just so sorry about what happened out there and all the trials and tribulations that you've had. So I really, what can I say? All right, let me get back to moving people over. I was working on a little project here right now that I was starting up. Let me see if I can find Zoom again since I got myself off track here. Okay, let's see. There are more attendees coming on. Yep. Fiona's coming on. Shay's coming on. Okay, good. All right. I think that's enough for now on that. So anyways, welcome everybody to the show again that never ends. And so today's kind of a special day for me as far as I was going to do a quick introduction, but a couple things that I want to note is a couple of our members have done very well and got some new positions and been very, which has really been really kind of cool. An example, let me see if I can pull this up real quick. Share. And it says start here. So one of the things that Jim Augustine alerted us to last week was that that Scott Gilmore just got made the new board chair for the National Registry. So good for him. He's worked there in that area for the longest time. I don't know if Kevin Mackey's on or not, but or any of the other folks that have worked with him in that area. But I don't know if there's anything you can say about that. I'm trying to see who else is on here that might know him in that position. Anybody else work with him in that along those lines? Well, if not, okay, that's but that it's just really cool that he has made that kind of achievement. And then Joe Holly, tell us a little bit about what happened with you with your new designation, right? What happened?
Oh, well, thanks, Paul. Good morning, everybody. I was elected as the chair of CAPC or CAPC, however you want to say it, the
Yeah.
Commission for Accreditation of Pre-Hospital Continuing Education. So Scott Gilmore's got the initial education side covered, and I've got the continuing education side covered.
That's right. It's great. I love it. So they got us coming and going. So that's great. Well, anyways, congratulations or condolences. I don't know because it's been a lot of work too. So good luck. Hey, well, I got
Well,
you on
thank you.
anything happening in the state this week by any chance?
The state is fairly quiet. We did not have any major issues with our recent presidential visit from earlier in the week. That went very well, and I got a new challenge coin out of it. So no major issues there. Other than that, things are pretty much status quo.
Okay, good. So this is a special day for me. I'm going to do a little quickie presentation, I think, as kind of an intro. If you guys can bear with me for a little bit. But it's this today's day is with some what's the word I'm looking for? Some sadness as well. But on the other hand, so it's a great time to celebrate. And that has to do with David Purse. So I wanted to let me go back and share a little bit with y'all. Hey, anybody else have any time constraints before we that has to get off at a certain time can that I should give a report in the meantime before we go. And David, can you be prepared to do the one you did for about the squads you did for us in Brevard County? Can you do something like that? Would you that be prepared, or can you work on getting that ready to go?
For now?
Well, in a minute or
Yeah,
two after
yeah.
we have initial. First, I want to talk a little bit about some things that you and I talked about yesterday. But but then I'd like to have you actually do that formal presentation because I think that would be a nice thing if you could do it.
Yeah, let me see
in
if
a
I
little
can
while.
find it.
Yeah, well, I was going to use some time to pull it up because I thought it was really good, and I just want to dedicate today to that because I think it's one of the biggest advances that we've had in the EMS for a lot of reasons. So I really do appreciate that. All right, and then in the interim, anybody else have time constraints? Please let me know. I haven't looked at the chat, so maybe I should look at the chat, right? All right. Oh, before I do get going, today's CME is 23090. 23090. Okay. It looks like I don't need to pull anybody else over, so we're doing good here. All right, so let's get going. First, I do want to share a little piece here, if I can pull this up now. And there's the thing I had on Scott. So let me see now. How do I move this here? Like, so what I was going to say, my story, that's where I said our story, but in some respects, it's our story because of some of the things that Dr. Cobb and Kopis did, back in the 60s and 70s, has affected us all. So it starts with me, in a sense, me being sleepless in Seattle, and I was an ICU doctor, and coming up with some very interesting things. And then they said, "Can you get out in the streets and help us out there?" So part of my job was to go out and help with the Seattle program, where they just trained firefighters to do medical stuff, and they called them paramedics. So part of my job was to sort of help out and see if there's some clever new ways to do things, or how to do good respiratory support, or just see how they were performing, etc., and so on. But what happened was that we did very well. We got amazing survival rates there. We trained most of the citizens how to do CPR, and they did a 60 minutes on it, saying if you're going to have a heart attack, have it in Seattle. And it was the first positive story that 60 Minutes had ever done, because they were usually an investigative office. The joke was, if you're having a bad day when there's a 60 Minutes film crew out in your front lawn when you wake up. And but it was a real positive story. And so we got contacted by people like Denton Cooley and DeBakey in Houston, and maybe come down and see if we can get people alive to get to the hospital so they could operate on them. So then, lured in 1982, they give you some perspective here. I was lured by Big City Lights, the chance to make big bucks. It's a joke, by the way. And the land of NASA and DeBakey, the land of the cowboy and the throwdown gun. And so I think, as many of you know, I spent most of my nights on the streets responding over about a 10, 15-year period, and so on. And along the ways, Physio Control had just started this program where they would actually want to train and groom some young champions. And so I was very fortunate to find this young man here. Look at David. Remember, you had hair? It was really good. And me too, right? And so you know where this one was? I think this picture was in Pittsburgh. We got a lot of pictures. I used to take David around to different places. So anyways, so David was applying. He had incredible background. First of all, he was this young hockey player out of Buffalo, New York, right, who claimed that he had done EMS work as an EMT or a paramedic or something like that, but then went to work in Los Angeles and out in the LA County area, and did his emergency medicine training and actually worked with the people out there in LA County. And but then came and did, and it's a very important person you need to know about, is Chuck Brown, who he came and did a resuscitation research fellowship with Chuck up in Ohio State. And Chuck was just brilliant. So David had the beauty of that. Then he wanted to do this EMS fellowship. So I applied for that thing, and I think we got him to come down. And I remember, hey, David, remember the first day, because you made the decision based on, because we had a cop shot, and you saw how the whole system worked, right? It was like amazing. David said, "I'm here, I'm going." So, but here's the thing. Here's when, as a recruit, I have to tell the story. I was explaining to David that the pay is bad, the hours stink, you're always away from the wife and kids, and your life's in constant peril. So, so David's asking me, so like, what's the good side, right? And so I said the following, if I can get this thing to go over. That is the good side, right, David?
That's right.
So right after his fellowship, he got to become the director of paramedic training in LA County, and ran the paramedic schools out there, and it was really cool. And then when I was departing there in 1996 to go up to Pittsburgh and help as Commonwealth Emergency Medical Director and run the Allegheny Trauma Center and all that, and flight services, David was selected to come and become hit the wrong thing, become the medical director in 1996. So that is, we're talking about 3 decades ago that he's been doing this, etc. And so I just wanted to say how long here he is with some of his associate medical directors. How many associate medical directors did you end up having? This is important for Steve Sanko's job, right? Did you end up getting throughout the years, David?
Yeah, I haven't added up, but it's not been that many. The group I have now have been with me for about 10 years. So um, I'd have to add it up. Probably maybe 12 total.
Yeah, so in a way you've groomed and trained other people who've gone in their own right have gone on to do some really good things. All right, so anyways, just to wrap this up, a hat trick of day, I guess I had to do that for your sake, David. Hat trick of decades later, we're now seeing a passing of an amazing era of accomplishments. And so I think this was in 2016, David, when you got this award. It was pretty so cool that he got the Innovator Award, but it was for many a thing. And this is just some of the things like the mobile stroke unit, the first mobile stroke unit for a fire department, in the country, the Ethan program we heard about a little while ago, et cetera. And one of the other things that here he says Houston helped during Katrina, he was just this master who really controlled a lot of stuff that went on during that event when people were coming out of New Orleans and being evacuated to Houston, set up the convention center there, just handled masterfully because it was a real challenge, amazing challenge when you have tens of thousands of people showing up. And so before you know it, they made him the health director for the city as well. So David's held a couple of hats. He's a direct report to the mayor as the director of the emergency medical services system there in Houston, and also the public health director. Okay, which are two positions he's about to surrender, and that's the person of the story today. And I just wanted to say is that I don't know how he does it, but he stays awake during some of our Eagles talks, right? Because of all the jobs that he has going on. But with that, I wanted to say, this is someone I admire and just so glad to call him friend and treasured friendship. So with that, David, can you reflect a little bit on what you think were some of the things that you thought were the best things you did or accomplished during that period of time?
Well, Paul, first of all, thank you very much. That was very nice, and I greatly appreciate it. You've been my mentor, for so many years, and I've called you with Paul. How do I handle this? And you say, "Oh man," and then we come up with some ideas about how to handle it. So you've always had my back, and I just want you to know that I appreciate that.
Sometimes I had your front too.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got
Okay.
you literally especially in the beginning you'd get out in front of problems. So
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, like what, like with your initial reaction with the fire chief that you inherited, right? So
yeah. So a couple of things that we did, and Paul, you started off talking about your experience in Seattle, and that really impacted me about the importance of having physicians out in the street and having hands-on and stuff. So one of the things that we did early on was we used to have the online medical direction was done by the physicians working in the Bentab ER. And so, as I was able to grow my medical staff with HFD, I said to myself, why are we having those internal medicine residents giving orders to, or the surgery resident giving orders? Because this is before Baylor had an EM residency program. And so we brought it in-house and
so
really
this was like
pushed
an
our guys.
online medical. You're talking about an online medical direction base station
Yep.
setup,
Yeah.
and it was the random whoever was on duty resident internist or surgeon. Is that what you're saying? Is that right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, got it. And they don't know the streets, right? So I get your point. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So you get a critically ill, hypotensive, difficulty breathing patient. They'd ask like 15 questions before they give an order, and then they would give the order, reluctantly. So we moved away from that, and we got our doctors to start doing it, and things worked really well. But then we also really started pushing our doctors to get out in the street and not just be the guy at the end of the phone. You had to be out in the street, and that built a rapport and a sense of camaraderie and trust. And Paul, you impact on me the importance of public trust and how the public,
Yeah.
I'm preaching to the choir, but people call 911 and a stranger comes to the door and they hand them their critically ill baby, the most precious thing in their entire existence, they hand over to a stranger because they called 911 and you're wearing the uniform that came through the door. And that's all based on public trust. And so that's incredibly important. But the other important thing was the trust between the paramedics and the EMTs and the medical director. And so by being out in the street, you earned that trust. And that was one of the things that you taught me and that we tried to perpetuate here in Houston. And so you asked how many assistant medical directors we've had. I'm guessing I have to add it up, but did find out yesterday we've trained 38 fellows here in Houston since. So that's a lot of new doctors out in the street that hopefully have gotten this. And you asked about some of the other big things that we did. Well, Houston was one of the first cities to have AEDs in multiple city buildings, and this came out right after the casino trial and the O'Hare Airport AED experience. So We had AEDs in multiple city buildings. We think we were the first one to have that. We changed remember we used to have Plan A testing. Paul
Yeah.
had Plan A testing. Basically was they would come in and well, at 2 o'clock in the morning, Paul would show up at your fire station and pull you out of bed and put you through a 2-hour Plan A test. Adult and peds. We train well
For their purposes, the Plan A was something we actually called in Seattle. We had like two protocols. One, how it's like, in other words, you had standing orders to run a cardiac arrest is what it was. And actually, we didn't even call it cardiac arrest. We called it circulatory arrest back then. I have the original protocol to show it to you. But I just basically used the same thing going over there. Here's our circulatory arrest protocol is what David's referring to. But I'm sorry to interrupt you, David. I want to make sure they knew what that was. That's all.
Yeah, yeah. So for reasons that were imposed upon us by the fire department, we had to change that. So now we have a paramedic practicum where we test our paramedics in mass. So 20 or 30 of them that come out of a paramedic class at the same time. But we patterned it after the oral boards, the ABEM oral boards. And so it's very much a very similar experience to that. In preparation for that, we actually now all of our paramedics get to go to the cadaver lab for a day. And so that was the trade-off that I worked with the department. Paul, you mentioned the mobile stroke unit. We now have, hopefully within a month, we'll have the second one on the street. And then by the end of the calendar year, we should have a third one on the street. We had our PATCAR trial, which was the pre-hospital administration of thrombolytics for cardiac patients. So we were treating STEMIs in the field with Retivase. And for those of you who've never used Retivase, it's a 2-bolus therapy of thrombolysis. And so we were given the first bolus in the field, and generally patients got into the cath lab before the second dose was due. And we saw a significant reduction in mortality and an improvement in morbidity with that. But then the PATCAR or the Retivase, the patent got sold to another company who didn't make it. And then so that ended. But it did show that paramedics working with physicians who will overread the 12 lead can identify patients who are appropriate to get thrombolysis in the field. So we can do it. It's just that now, like even TNK is crazy expensive, right? So that's bolus therapy. So that's good, but it's crazy expensive.
Do you want snakes?
And
not these, but right now the pot right behind you. I'll get it.
Okay. And so then,
sorry. Hey, Stein, you're live, just so you know. Okay.
Okay. And then the other big thing was just that, the Ethan program that you mentioned that our emergency telehealth. Those are sort of the big things that we've done over the years. One thing I want to point out though, and this may be a little bit politically incorrect, but bear with me. Most of these things were not done because of the Houston Fire Department. They were done in spite of the Houston Fire Department. So we have a really big behemoth fire department, which is a fire department. And so for those of you who are working in EMS systems where you think the administration is not as supportive as you would like, I hear you. You just got to get creative. You can make changes, but it's now some of the medium and smaller fire departments are very EMS oriented. It's a lot easier, but some of the big ones, my experience, it can be difficult, but it is not impossible. It's just a bigger challenge. That's all. Anyways, so Paul, you wanted me to talk about the ALS versus tiered presentation?
Yeah, but before we do that, I wanted to bring up, you just brought up the political end of things. And I guess we should really talk about it because you've outlived how many mayors and how many fire chiefs and so on. Because I'm seeing in a lot of places around the country, people being pushed out in their positions. We're seeing that with a lot of our good friends here in the last year or two. And so just want you to sort of comment on that because that was a threat you faced almost immediately, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that was thanks to you because you got the city ordinance set up so that the EMS director, not just medical director, the EMS director is the term, reports to the mayor because the second fire chief told me right to my face he would have fired me if he could. So,
yeah, so it was interesting because David comes in and this guy who comes in gets appointed as the fire chief and the new mayor gets elected, brings him in and said, "Hey, I'm letting you go," and he goes, "Well, you can't. I don't work for you." He goes, "Yes, I do. You're in my budget." He goes, "Yeah, my salary's in your budget, but I work for the mayor and all that." And he said, David was able to produce the ordinance. And what I had originally done, anticipating that I might be gone and to protect whoever was coming in, I set it up so you had to be a direct report to the mayor and the president of the university who had online medical direction, that kind of thing. And I snuck it into some, I think it was like a Parks and Recreation, thing. It was tagged on. I don't know. But we kind of purposely, the mayor's chief of staff at the time, wanted us to bury it and put it in there and for that protection. Mayor Lanier was fantastic. He was just
Yeah.
brilliant. And it worked. I mean, obviously in your case. And then that guy was fired within a year, right? Because he
Yeah.
was
He,
so
14
corrupt.
months.
Huh?
He 14 months and he was fired.
Yeah, but it could have screwed up the whole, situation that they had gotten. And here you are, 3 decades later, and accomplished so much. It's just been unbelievable. And but anyway, so there's so many things, and I'm saying David will be around and help you out with different things and that you may come across or you have to deal with. And he's just so brilliant about things. And what I wanted him to talk about is that in the Seattle system, when we started out. We actually had only 4 medic units for a city of 600,000 people and daytime population, maybe 8 or 900,000. 4 medic units only. And we basically said that we ran the system as basic life supports because we saw that 90% of the calls didn't really need a paramedic. And we said basically be handled by EMT transfers, and we trained every firefighter to do that. And in fact, in a fire station, what we would do is they'd have 2 officers, and then we'd have a ladder truck and an engine company. And then let's say at Station 25, we had a thing called the aid car, which is a BLS unit, and we would assign let's say one person from each apparatus from about 7 a.m. to 8, to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and then the 7 p.m. to 7 a shift. And then on Thursday, these guys would come back and, that kind of do the same thing. So everybody shared in the load. And if anybody wanted to become a paramedic, they may take on more of those shifts. And so everybody in the whole department really knew how to do medical care because 90% of what we did anyways. And the most important stuff was going to be CPR or later eventually AEDs and so on, or stopping the bleed and so on. And so we kept a small cadre I only had 60 medics, I think, that I was working with. And for example, they did over 3,000 intubations a year. A lot of them would be doing, I don't know how many per year. And their skill set was so good. And that's just a surrogate marker for skills. Their skills were also seeing a lot of the more advanced cases and being sophisticated mentally about it. And it worked out really well. So I think that was one of the secret sauces that not only did we pay attention to that, but we were there. I mean, we knew everybody. We knew and Joe was having a problem with the custody case, or someone's problem with his ex-wife, or whatever it means. You just knew this cadre of people that would actually rotate with us at Harborview, the trauma center. So, anyways, when I got to Houston, I said, "Wow, we have a paramedic on every corner." I thought this is cooler. We got a better thing. But then I saw that the skill sets weren't there. They weren't allowed to intubate, et cetera. And there was just all sorts of, I said, oh, maybe this is an issue. And then we were having shortages. Paramedics were quitting. They just wanted to get off the ambulance, okay, and become a firefighter again. There was all that stuff. So interestingly enough, we were kind of forced into it. And it was actually some of my supervisors, like a Wes Warnke, David, right? Or what was his name? Yeah, who's our guy that went down to the dispatch office, did such a great job down there, right? But I mean, I could go on and on. And they basically convinced me that that's the way to go. And it turned out it made a major difference. And we had incredible increases in our outcomes. But then along comes David Pearce, who basically has now, I think, taken it to the next level. And I think everybody, for me, it's a ideal model in many respects. And so it's like one of those things where he called me the mentor, but the master's been outmastered by by the mentee there. So David, why don't you go ahead and tell us your perspective, and I'd like to have a parting word to the rest of the group. Okay.
Okay. You want me to do
Yeah, if you don't
slide
mind.
presentation?
Does anybody have any questions for him or anything to state? Otherwise, David, if you don't mind doing that, I'd like to have you do it while we got a captured audience here with the group. So it's good.
All right,
Thanks.
I'm gonna try to share my screen here.
Okay.
And do you guys see that?
It's not up yet, David. And maybe I have to allow you to share. I maybe have to be the person that oh, sorry, I did something wrong here. Hang on. I did something wrong here myself. Okay, here it is. Now it's up. And then can you go to full screen or something like that on this?
Yep, there it is. You
There
see
you
that?
go. Yep, I can see it very
Okay.
well. Thank you.
All right. So ALS versus tiered, and ALS versus tiered, right? So, is there a question? So I've got a thing on top. I can't read the top layer of my thing. I can't even read the question is up there. Hang on a second. Anyways, so we know that, when we go out on our calls, what percentage of our calls are really true life-threatening calls? And it's really, really a small percentage of calls that are the life-threatening ones. We all know that's the same as across all of our systems. And what do those calls really need? Well, they need rapid bleeding control. They need rapid airway management. They need rapid defibrillation. And then the rest of our calls are really about good customer service, right? The other 90-ish% of our calls, some of those patients are sick, pale diaphoretic hypotensive, and you need to be smart enough to recognize it. And some of them require more than what the average EMT should, but the majority of our calls just need good customer service, just being nice to people and getting them where they need to go. So we did a couple of studies here looking at these life-saving things, and we had two studies. This first one with Craig Key and I and Rich Bradley, and both of these studies basically showed was that if you have a smaller number of paramedics who are dedicated and focused on those critical patients, they tend to have a better skill set. Now, one of the skills, and Paul mentioned this, one of the most important skills is not your ability to intubate, it's your ability to take a good history, really listen to the patient, because as we all know, we've all been taught that 90% of diagnoses come from history taking and another 10% from physical exam, or some, maybe your percentages that you were taught were a little bit different, but basically it's from good history taking. And it's being the cerebral person, it's being the thinker, it's being the one that understands and sees past what is apparent and find out what is really going on. And so when we looked at these studies, we kind of took an introspective view at what we had going on in Houston. And what we found was one of the studies was we looked at the core of the city, which the higher call population area was, it was a tiered system where we had ALS and BLS ambulances. And then out towards the periphery, which is more suburban, if you will, it was an all ALS system because the call volume is lower, the number of calls per day. So we decided to compare those two. Now, remember, in our system, it being fire-based, it's all seniority. So those paramedics are out in the lower call volume. They've got 15 years experience in the high call volume area before they can move out there. So these are not rookie paramedics making rookie mistakes or such. These are just, these are really good paramedics when they moved out there. And so when we looked at some of these things like the dispatch to shock interval, the arrival to shock interval, IV, intubation, when we looked at how long it was taking, we found that in the tiered area, these things were all occurring much more quickly. And by the way, while I don't have a slide to show it, the response times, that doesn't account for this because in the quieter areas, they weren't out on another run. They weren't coming from further away. In fact, the response times were a little bit longer in the tiered area because it's busier and very often the nearest unit wasn't available. So it was one from a station 2 or 3, 4 stations away that was making it. But you can see that in terms of how quickly they were able to achieve these skills. And remember, maybe they didn't get the IV on the first attempt, or maybe they didn't get the intubation on the first attempt. So this was the dispatch or arrival until successful IV start or intubation. And as you look at that, you can see the arrival to shock was not quite as bad as with the other skills. And that's why, because you didn't get the IV the first time. You pretty much always get the shock the first time. But getting there, getting your equipment set up, and getting the shock on board was still faster in the tiered system, and that was not because of response times. Then when we looked at overall success in starting IVs and getting patients intubated, well, shocker, right? So those who were doing it more frequently were doing it more consistently. And again, remember, those in the all ALS area were not rookie paramedics. These are, 10-year plus paramedics who were, this is basically what this shows me. This is some degree of rust out is what was going on. They were not able to maintain their skills because of a lack of frequency of doing their skills. So let's take one forward. So clinically, what was the impact? What did this mean? Well, here we got our return of spontaneous circulation, survival to admission, survival to discharge, and alive at 1 year were all better in those areas where the paramedics were busier, taking care of seriously and critically ill patients more frequently than in the area where really good paramedics who had many years experience just weren't doing it as frequently. So this really kind of goes to the fact that, some degree of specialization, even with EMS in terms of taking care of critical patients, clinically turns out to be actually important. And the notion that we are a better EMS system because I can get a paramedic there more quickly doesn't really hold that paramedic really doesn't have the skill set to be able to perform in the crisis situations to help the patient. And so that's always been one of my pet peeves, and Paul was the one who taught me that. But it's, here it is in black and white that it actually makes a difference in the clinical outcomes. So We then took it another level. We took our paramedics off of ambulances and we put them into squads. And the reason for that is that if you're on a paramedic ambulance and you get set out on a chest pain call that turns out to be a bee sting, in our system, you could ask a BLS ambulance to come and take that patient to the hospital, and the ALS medic unit could get back in service. But they tended to not do that because the BLS guys would complain that you're dumping on me, yada, yada, yada. So the paramedics would take that patient to the hospital, but they would then take themselves out of the game and take themselves out of service. When we put them in squads and we converted that medic ambulance to a basic ambulance, we put them in squads. Yes, the fire chief would argue, now you're sending 2 units to the same call. Yes, sir, we are. But one of those units, the vast majority of time, because there's a limit to how accurate we can get at dispatch, the majority of the time when it doesn't require paramedic intervention, gets back in service. When we did this, we saw a 3-minute reduction, 3-minute reduction in ALS responding to CPR cases. That happened day one. That happened overnight. We started on November 1st, whatever year it was. And that month, the response time for ALS to critical cases dropped by 3 minutes. And it maintained that way throughout the duration of while we had the squads. We saw a 30% increase in the number of patients who were found in VF. So we got there before they transitioned out of VF into asystole. And that's it. Bada bang. So, yeah. So, Paul, I didn't get a chance to go through all these slides, so maybe my timing's a little bit off. But anyways, yeah, that's what we found. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
The first thing I wanted to point out is that I think a couple of things I used to say was when I first got, or I went around to different places, I could see that it took people so long, the paramedics, because of their skills set, that they often couldn't get it done very quickly. So I'd rather have 2 of my medics in Seattle get there in 7 minutes than versus somebody else in 5 minutes, because they were just like ninjas getting things done under those circumstances. It was profound. And I think what we found originally when we did the first switch over from all ALS to, we went from 36 paramedic units down to 12, I think. And what we found was we actually improved our response times because the paramedics were available. Even though they had a larger area territory to cover, they got there faster because they were more available. That's what had happened. They didn't have to do all those transfers. And the other thing is that we found is that sometimes the medics who were, if you had the outlying areas that were quieter, we could take someone from station 7, and then how they just wanted to be with their partner. That was the biggest thing, just like the cop thing. And you could send them out for a day out to the, and then you have highly skilled people working out in that there. So there's different ways to even manipulate the system to make it improve it even further, that you're always delivering high quality care, in different places. So I just think what you've done, but the squad thing is beautiful because what's happening is that everybody's a BLS unit for everything, because that's the majority of what we do. Then it's like a hazmat team. They come in and they're specialists for the thing where they're really needed. And then what makes it even better, it's not just 2 paramedics on an ambulance and one has to drive and one has to be in the back. What you've got is a team there where the EMT can continue to drive, and then they could also they'll drive the squad in if the paramedics are in the back. There's just so many aspects of this that I think are really beautiful, that work really well. And I'm just congratulate you for taking it to the next level and showing that the survival rates were better, let alone all the other things you showed as markers. But I think the greatest point is that they're just so much skilled on so many different levels, et cetera. And by the way, were there fire chiefs that wanted to basically back off? What happened there as they get new fire chiefs come in?
That's an important question. I was going to add that. So under Chief Boriski, we got this up and going when we had, I think, 19 squads at one point. And then we got a new mayor.
I love Phil, by the way. He was the guy that said, no matter how minor it is, this is the worst day of their life. And we got to be real sympathetic. And he was just so good about serving the public. But it's great to hear that was him. Okay, go ahead.
But then we got a new mayor, so we got a new fire chief, and we got a guy, Terry Garrison, who came in. He had been in Phoenix. Really nice guy and really smart, but he didn't understand why we had squads because they didn't have that where he came from. And so he and I had a long discussion. We kind of went back and forth on it, and I just couldn't convince him of the advantages of it. And so he wound up getting rid of half the squads because he was worrying about our transport capacity and that we needed more ambulances to transport because our call volume was going up. Our call volume in Houston goes up 3 to 4% per year. Our fleet goes up 3 to 4% per decade. So increasing, workload on the transport units. So he wanted to convert the squads back to medic units. He did that with about half of them. Took about a year, and he came back to me and he said, "You know what? You were right." So credit to Chief Garrison. He came back and said, "You were right. Everything you said about the squad program is absolutely right. I'm not going to get rid of any more squads." And he didn't. So the rest of the time he was the fire chief, he didn't get rid of any more of them. He didn't replace any of them that he got rid of, but he didn't get rid of them. So get a new mayor, get a new fire chief. Sam Pena comes in. Another nice guy, really smart, comes from El Paso, where they didn't have squads. We have the exact same conversation. And they said to him, I had this conversation with Chief Garrison. Why don't you talk to him and see what he thinks? And so I don't know if he ever did or not, but he decided that, we don't need squads. So he converted the remaining of them back to, he was going to convert the rest of them back to transport medic ambulances. And about a year later, he comes back to me and he says, "You know what? You were right." Again, the same conversation that I had with Garrison. Everything you said about the squads was right. I'm not going to get rid of any more of them. And at this point, we're down to 6 squads are left. And he says, "I'm not going to get rid of any more of them." About 6 months later, a memo comes out getting rid of the last 6 squads. And so I call him. I said, "Chief, what's this? I thought you said you weren't going to get rid of any more squads." And I remember, it's just so funny. He goes, "You're on my list of people to call." I think I bet I am, and I bet I know why you weren't so anxious to call me. But he said, "Here's the deal. I still feel the same way. Squads are absolutely the way to go. The problem is I didn't come to that realization until after we had put in this year's budget. And in this year's budget, I didn't put in for any more squad vehicles. These guys keep wrecking them, and I got 15 brand new ambulances sitting over there with nobody to put in them." So we got rid of the last 6 squads. But to his credit, before he left office, he reestablished 6 squads before he left office. So the point there is the fire administration may not always get it at first, but eventually they did come around to get it. And, and we are still struggling to get back up to our 19 squads, because now the situation from City Hall is, every time you take a squad and you convert it to a basic ambulance and a squad, I'm sorry, every time you take a medic ambulance and you make it into a basic ambulance and a squad, you've created 2 new positions that have to be approved by City Council. And so with budget being really tight right now, it's hard to get that done. But the current fire chief, Tom Munoz, has committed to doing it before he leaves office. So he's got 6 years to get it done.
I can't begin to tell you the number of times where I've had people come back even a year or 2 later saying, he goes, "You know what?" He goes, "I get it now," right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing. So, because it just is not intuitive to them that less is better under these circumstances so often. I have some other comments that I can make, but and questions I had for you. But let's go over to Stein. He's been very patient, having his hand up all this time. Stein?
Yeah, thanks. And Dave, that was an awesome presentation. This is something that I've been trying to bring forth in my community for a long time, but it just meets absolute walls. The fire chief is convinced that we have to have all ALS, not all ALS, but every single.
Hey, Stein, I just want you to know you're breaking up a little bit, but so it sounds like it's something to do, but you've got obstruction. Maybe is that Randy you're talking about? Because maybe I can help you out on that end. That would be, because it sounds like you're always going into some good directions lately. So that would be good to know.
Yeah, no, that's great, and I just appreciate you guys bringing up the politics and everything behind it. That's a barrier that I haven't been able to pass.
Yeah. Hey, so the one of the things that I was hoping that Peter Antevy would get on, or any of our other folks that have worked with us in Brevard County last year, we had that problem with the hospitals closing, right? And so one of the things that we did in Seattle was, besides sometimes just let our basic life support units go out there and see it, but also with the paramedics, we what would happen is if the paramedics were responding and the engine company got there because it was supposed to be a shooting, and so they get there and they said, "Hey, code green, the medic unit, we've got somebody who is shot in the foot. We got controlled bleeding. We're going to go ahead and transport him into the hospital." So that a lot of times, so we would get called out to half the cases, but then turned around and maybe only end up doing 30% of the cases in the end. But one of the things we were allowed to do at that time, and they still do it to this day, is also make a decision to transfer over to a private ambulance service. Some fire departments think that's a threat, but at least what it did was it took some of the load off of us and got us back to service. Even our basic life support units were back in service as a result. So we actually had this problem with the hospital closures and the paramedics being tied up at ambulances at hospitals and so on. And so they came over and they started transferring some of the patients on the scene who could just be transferred in, to the hospital for basic stuff, whatever, mobilization or whatever it might be. And an interesting phenomenon happened. And at first, they were a little threatened because the private ambulance service is going to take over or whatever it might be. But it turned out because it got people back in service, it got them away from waiting at the wall at the hospital. The morale went up significantly. So, David, did you have issues with morale going in either of these directions, or as you're going through? You're on mute right now, but tell us how it affected morale. Okay.
Oh, so when we had the squads, when we had the all ALS ambulances, we had always had a list of paramedics who wanted to get off and get over the fire truck because they were burned out. When we went to squads, that list went basically down to nothing. And this had a real impact in Stein for the politics of it. So right now, when HFD trains a new paramedic, they estimate it costs between $175,000 and $200,000 because while the guy's in school for a year, you're paying overtime for somebody to fill the spot that he might have filled while on the fire truck, if he were on the field. So that's where the big cost comes. They say it's $175,000 to $200,000 to train a new paramedic. Well, if your paramedics are on squads and you got enough of them so they can rotate on and off the fire truck from time to time, so they get to keep up their firefighting skills, your attrition of paramedics drops off dramatically, and therefore your need and expense of hiring and training new paramedics goes almost to nothing. So right now, HFD is doing what I'm very much not happy with, but they're going to train about 300 new paramedics this year at $200,000 a piece. That's like $6 million or whatever, or my decimals may be off. It's either $6 or $60 million, but it's an obscene amount of money. When if they spent less money and just put them into squads that could rotate, they wouldn't have to spend that much money, and they have much happier and much more clinically astute paramedics. So, anyways, I'd offer that to you. Paul, you're on mute.
So many other aspects to it and nuances. Like I said, that sometimes you could rotate people out and give them a break when they're in a busy station, but they're with their partner. Yeah, and that area gets a highly sophisticated. That's what you guys did. You made sure there were sophisticated people that were and highly skilled people out in the peripheries where it was a lot slower. Right on down to the training. I think it was really important that paramedic people didn't just become a paramedic, that they were first a basic EMT for many a year, getting that in, so that when they went to paramedic school, they were it wasn't an abstract to talk about a heart attack or to talk about this or that. They already knew the concepts very well, and they were much better trainees. As a result, they came out in much better shape. Is you same experience with you as well? Oh, you're muted now.
No, Paul, you're absolutely right, and that's one of the problems that we're having with HFD now is that they are hiring new firefighters, putting through firefighting school, and then forcing them to go to paramedic school. So yeah, we got a lot of green guys who, and by the way, our recruiting division is all about helmets, hoses, and bunker coats. Yeah, it's a problem.
Well, then one of the politics around that is that, and I think Dennis Holder helped us with this a little bit, at least back then, was that he wanted to make sure that part of the promotional exams were heavily laden with EMS stuff, because therefore it made it an important thing. Plus, they understood the job if they became a district chief or deputy fire chief or whatever it might be. So, anyways, we could probably go on and on. I'd like to revisit it again sometime. But this is I think that what you've done there has been remarkable, and I've seen the difference, the morale, the skills, the responses, and then documented survival rates have been just really great. And it's just not intuitive, for someone said, "Hey, we have less paramedics," but you do have less. Yeah.
Let me say one thing. So I'll be leaving. My last day will be the end of April 30th. It'll be the last day of April.
Okay.
For those who are interested or those who know somebody who might be interested, the position is now posted. It just got posted a week ago today, and it'll
Okay.
be open until filled. So if you go to the City of Houston HR webpage and search for it, you can find it. But I don't have it right here. I put it in the chat. But if you know anybody's interested, the position's open and they're doing a national search. So
Okay.
let people know. If anybody on this line or you know somebody,
Is
let
there
them
any,
know.
is there anything about age discrimination and all that? It's good. Chris Colwell just made a point. It's the same thing. It's like the trauma center thing, and that, having 90 trauma centers is not a good thing for your place. It's much better to have a small number of trauma centers in a given area for the skill sets and all the same thing. Yeah, good
I think
point.
it's the same, right? The same concept is we do well what we do often. We're
Yeah.
not going to do well. None of us are going to do well with something that we don't do very often. And so, no, I think this concept, it makes so much sense, and yet it is so hard to get across in the environments we're in.
One thing I was very fortunate was to get it done, and that because they were some of the people that helped talk me into doing it. Was the union people actually, and when started to understand it and got the concept behind that, they were the ones that helped me get. So it's all political because at first it was saying they're going to take the paramedic out of my neighborhood. Well, the paramedic was already taken out of your neighborhood because they were busy, transferring lots of basic calls to the hospital, right, David?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're running all over town.
So, all right. Well, all right. I think that probably, I don't know if we beat the dead horse, but I just want to make sure that everybody got heard something that I think is your finest legacy, in my opinion. But there were so many legacies that you left us. I mean, you're things that we didn't even talk about. Some of your first clinical trials, like looking at the Geezer Squeezer or whatever it might be, various studies that you did over the years, were just fantastic and really appreciate it. And then the work you did in the laboratory with Chuck Brown. And I think it's a shame because we know Chuck had the right thing and it just got screwed up usually as usual with the politics of the Heart Association, right? So it was really cool. Thank you, Stein, for saying that. That was great because we'll help you out if that's an issue there. So, all right. All right. It says here, did you get any insight about the QA repercussions of your tiered whatever? I'm not sure what that you're saying their cars, they're tiered chase cars. Okay. Did they have a downgrade process? We had an emphasis on this when we went to paramedic engines for similar reasons, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, so you can downgrade in that, when both the squad and the basic ambulance arrive on scene, the squad often lets the BLS take them to the hospital. Yeah, on occasion there were cases that were sicker than the paramedic thought they were. So that was a teaching moment. Problems? No, we didn't have any problems. We did have QA opportunities, that's for sure, but we didn't have any disastrous cases.
It's interesting. We were talking about the squad thing actually was you said you sent two apparatus. Well, if it's a cardiac arrest or a major case, we're sending an engine company in most places. You're sending, fire service. And then if you had to put the two paramedics in the back, then you had to have someone from the engine company drive it. So they were out of service. They had to go to the hospital. That's why this is so efficient because you got the driver is already there, and then someone could take your car, your chase car in for you, and you had two paramedics in the back, and so I think it was just great what you came up with. So, and then puts the engine company back in service so they can do what's the most important thing, which is get there fast to stop the bleeding or put the defibrillator on, right? So it's good because it's pretty much that. All right. Well, listen, Ben, what were you saying here? Or can you tell us what you're saying?
Yep, thanks for the insights. Great to hear the history, and it's fascinating that we've encountered some degree or variation of these challenges, across the years. So I know we've always relied on this body for that kind of insight and move forward, especially the political ramifications. I felt like you were speaking to Baltimore City Fire Department when you talk about some of the political challenges you've negotiated.
Yeah, it's only there, right? Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to. I mean, I've worked in and around with Dr. Purse for the better part of probably 20 years, and I mean, as not a physician, as an EMS chief, I didn't have a better resource that I could contact when I had issues or hypothetical situations, and just my hat's off to Dr. Purse. My hair is catching up with yours rapidly. But I just wanted to share that. I mean, in the later years, the fellow spent some time out here as well. But I mean, just you wouldn't find a better EMS medical director as a mentor and as a partner across the country. I just want to point that out.
So, David, this is probably a tough question, but I want to reemphasize that David was the public health director too for City of Houston. So, did that take up a lot more time and spread you thin? Or did you have the EMS down enough that you could now spend more time doing public health? And did one help the other, like by being, a public health director? Just like I'm going to run that by Ben Weston in a second, but go ahead, David.
Yeah, so obviously it was more work. Again, maybe not being politically correct. The health department is filled with people who signed up to do public health. The fire department is people who signed up to be firefighters, and so the challenges continue to be predominantly on the fire department side. And yeah, I don't want to say much more about that. Now there were some other synergies that picked up between the health department and the fire department that are not really terribly EMS oriented, but we started combining databases, and we found that in certain neighborhoods that had the worst air pollution, those are also the neighborhoods that had the least amount of bystander CPR. We were able to find out that, air pollution, as everybody on here knows, can induce, inflammation of small arteries, which can cause heart attacks and strokes. And what we found out was those were the same neighborhoods that had the lowest amounts of bystander CPR and the highest mortality from out of hospital cardiac arrest. So we partnered with the American Heart Association and the houses of faith in those neighborhoods and had the ushers all become CPR instructors. We also did the whole wastewater thing during COVID and started, testing the wastewater to find out where now we test for, 50 or 60 different pathogens. And we know when we've got measles before anybody's showing up to the hospital with measles and so on and so forth. So, these are just overlaps between EMS and public health that I never would have predicted, but they've been really cool things, I think.
Oh yeah, let me take it to another level because I'm now like this public health person, right? But that's how it started. We had a child shot once a month back in 1988. All of a sudden we saw in 1989 it was like once a week, and then it was almost once a day by 1990. So I have to go, and I wanted, instead of having the residents do it, I wanted to make sure I was there to tell those parents that your precious child was gone. And so I wanted to be notified anytime a child was shot. So so I could get right to the hospital to make sure that I was on top of that for a lot of reasons. But then the medics would take information, Doc, you weren't going to believe it. The shotgun was right there in the living room next to the kids playing. Okay. Oh, Doc. Or then later we started taking it for drowning. Remember we did all that work with Denise Mann, and they said, the gates that the kids would drown in the little apartment complex pool, and they didn't have any of those gates up or any of those other things. So then we were able to make those public health interventions, and that became national after that. But it was cool because I had the paramedics say, hey, on the scene, what did you see? They go, hey, the kids could just in, or the gate that was there was broken or whatever it might be. So they became our eyes and ears on the streets about what was happening in those places, that we can make some public health interventions as a result. And we passed that ordinance about the gun safety. I didn't call it gun control, but the gun safety thing, which was we called the gun responsibility ordinance, that you had to lock up your guns or whatever it might be, so your kids couldn't get at it. And that made a tremendous difference in life saving. The number of kids that died from gunshots went way down as a result. So that, I think it's a great interaction, a great opportunity on every scene. And I like what Phil Barisky and you guys did, and you did, David. It was that every scene was a public relations opportunity too, right?
Mm-hmm.
That be really nice to the people around, the witnesses particularly that were sitting there. So it was cool, really good stuff. Well, let's finish off with one thing. Tell them about the Holder rule, if you don't mind, okay? Then where it is and what it says, okay?
So Dennis Holder was an assistant chief for the Houston Fire Department. He's a little bit of notable about him. He was the last assistant chief who actually tested to that position. After him, they became appointed and had to be approved by the mayor and council. But he was the last one who actually tested. So that meant that no matter what happened, they couldn't remove him as an assistant chief. And so he survived as an assistant chief across a couple of fire chiefs. But Dennis Holder he was an absolute wonderful man, but he was a fire dog kind of guy. And he came over and he got assigned to become the EMS assistant chief at one point. And I don't know if he was happy about that or not, but he quickly became very passionate about it. And he has a holder rule, which we have posted in the hallways of EMS headquarters, and the fire department command staff all knows because it's in their walls as well. And it's really simple. It says that you treat every patient as if they're a member of your own family. And we always joke that it has to be a member of your family that you like. But but
Right.
the rule is a holder rule, which is in multiple documents in the Houston Fire Department, is that you will treat every patient as if they're a member of your own family.
And he was a great role model too, because let's say we went into this scene and
Mhm.
and then we rushed to the hospital. Let's say it was a trauma or whatever, but we left I don't know, paper or IV bags
Yeah.
or whatever 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 you want to say, the things that things were came in, you just trashed out the area, or there's blood there or whatever. He would stay behind. It wasn't beyond him also to go show up to the scene, even at his size. He was a little overweight, to do CPR. He'd join in and do CPR, but as everybody else went, he would stay behind and clean up the area. He was very
Yeah.
respectful. Had no problem getting a cat out of a tree, right? He
Yeah.
was a real public servant, and that's why we talk about that. So we're
Let
very
me add one quick little story. So, I kind of said some negative things a little bit about the fire department being a fire department. We had a case last Sunday where they were fighting a fire, and a 60-year-old firefighter, EO off of one of the fire trucks, he just started like looking bad. And it was one of the district chiefs who was on scene who walked up and said, "Hey man, you don't look good. I want the medics to take a look at you." He of course says, "No, I'm fine." He says, "No, I'm telling you, you're going to go and you're going to get checked out by the paramedics." And so they load him in the back of the ambulance. They've got him on the stretcher, and he's pale and he doesn't look good. And they're working him up, and his eyes roll back in his head, and he collapses. He like slumps, and they had him on the monitor, and he went from a sinus tachycardia to VF, and the district chief was right there to start compressions on him. And it was 43 seconds from arrhythmia to shock, and he woke up and said, "Oh, I guess I passed out, didn't I?" I said, "Yeah, you kind of passed out. We're going to the hospital."
yeah.
But the point is that there are the holder rule and treating everyone as a member. Well, sometimes it really is our family, and you need to treat them just as well. And in that case, we saved that firefighter's life for all intents and purposes, and he went to the hospital, and he's getting his workup, and he's going to be fine.
Yeah. And I'll say, it's everything you make that point because, and it goes back to what I was saying about Dennis Holder not wanting to, could just stay behind and clean things up. When I was leaving, and they did a press conference with me, and someone said, "Hey, what'd you feel was your greatest accomplishment, though? The life saving, the research you did, blah, 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 And I said, actually, I think my proudest moment came about 5, 6 years ago, when we started sending the fire trucks out to do first response, and they were not happy about that and often complained they went out to see a headache or something. And we said, "Yeah, you're right. 80% of those turn out to be nothing. 20% end up having some kind of space occupying lesion or a problem on the CT scan. So maybe 80% of the time we don't need to send you out, or who knows, right?" But I'd have to explain that to them all that. It was just always found myself, catching up with that. Well, one day I go out and we went to a scene. The Medic 3 was going to be late getting there. I got there with engine 48. About the same time, they put the AED on, and the history was that this was a 50-ish-year-old man, whose son walks into the bedroom and finds him totally, ashen, right? So it's unwitnessed arrest. They didn't do CPR or anything like that. He went and got his mother. The mother, who's at a neighbor's house, comes back. So it's clear it's unwitnessed, and no shock advised. And as soon as we get the paddles on later, the pads on or whatever, it was asystole. So there was no way this guy's going to survive. But he did vomit. I got him intubated pretty quickly. I was there before the engine company, before the medics got there. And I said, "Well, I'll give him a couple of rounds of epi when they get here," but it was pretty clear that it was all over. So I talked to, what was it? Remember Ron Wisniewski, David? Remember him? He was a great guy. He was the supervisor. So I said, "Look, this is an unusual situation. Let's not pronounce it dead here at the scene. I could see it's very upsetting. Let's go ahead and do a slow, roll into the hospital. You can give him a couple more epis on the way in. And let's do it. And Ron, can you take the boy and I'll take the wife in with me in my car?" So I was getting ready to talk to her, lay crepe and so on, and yeah, just be there for her. And all of a sudden, one of the engine company guys came over. And I said, Doc, can we talk to you for a second? I'm thinking, oh, this is not a good time, to complain about the headache that you went on or whatever it might be. And he said, Hey, Doc, they don't need to come back and see that. Do you mind if we stay behind and clean up that area with the blood and the vomit and all that? And I was and then it was that moment I realized those guys had come to the point that they knew they were public servants and they were going to be there and do the best to provide not management or treatment, but care. And so that's the cool part about this whole thing and about our job. So thank you so much, David, for for honoring our trade, our craft. And so thank you so much for the years of work that you've done. So which is really cool. All right. Well, let's move around the horn if you don't mind. And to everybody else, thank you, David, and congratulations on everything. Well, I guess what we should do is let's go ahead and start with New York City, which has always had a tiered system already, right, in place, right, Glenn? So,
Yes, absolutely. We've been a three-tiered system, for our higher priority segments, a BLS unit, ALS unit, the engine company with certified first responders that can defibrillate do CPR, and for cardiac arrest, we send a supervisor as well.
but it wasn't always that way, right? And you guys saw survival rates reflected that as well, right? Way back, yeah.
We thought, but it's still questionable this many years later for us.
Yeah,
Anyway, updates for us, everything's status quo. We are, NYPD is on higher alert with the Passover Jewish holidays coming up next week.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to put units out to cover all the religious areas and such. The police commissioner cited some of the attacks that have been going on in the city, throughout the country, including the IED that they threw in front of the Gracie Mansion, the mayor's residence, that luckily did not explode. So they are on a little bit higher alert. Nothing credible, but she is concerned from what she's saying.
All right. So, and then do you have any other like festivals coming up or anything like that you have to cover? You're always covering something. Is there something that may be of more concern than usual?
Nothing really. I think at this point we're just kind of monitoring everything.
Yeah. And I was wondering if people are going to start jumping out of buildings on Wall Street with the way the stock market's crashing,
It's been crazy. Absolutely.
Yeah. Golly. All right. So let's, hey, I did refer to Ben Weston before. We're talking about combining the work you're doing. You're kind of less of a director as much as a consultant for public health there. But tell us a little bit is there anybody else that does public health there besides you in the county, then Ben?
Hey, yeah, certainly we have our public health officers, but mine is more advisory on kind of public health policy. So kind of like David was saying, I think it's been a good experience to kind of pull EMS and public health together from a data standpoint, operations, and just overall partnership. So it's been good.
And your dashboards have been really helpful that you guys are doing, right? And in using EMS as well in that. Tell us, give a couple examples of that if you don't mind.
Yeah, thanks. We've worked hard ever since the pandemic when we released a really broad COVID dashboard. We've done quite a few. So we have kind of bread and butter EMS topics like a stroke, STEMI, cardiac arrest dashboard to show all of our EMS metrics and a lot of community metrics. And then countywide, we have a number of dashboards on things ranging from motor vehicle crashes, opioid overdoses, housing. So a lot of different areas, some pulling in EMS data, some medical examiner data, other county data, health system data. So it's been a good collaboration, and we always find that it allows other community members and community organizations we don't anticipate to use our data to do health improvements as well.
Yeah, and that's great. And then, by the way, I did want to mention, I don't know if Josh Hartman's still on, but Josh, this collaboration we've had with you and Ben Weston has been fantastic. I just read the article that's coming out in the spring issue about pediatric seizures, and it's really good. It's a great article. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but we got really good feedback also from your editors and Jonathan, but also Kristen Carroll as well. So thank you,
Yep,
but mostly thank you to Ben because it's just fantastic paper that you wrote. So
absolutely. We're very appreciative.
so anyways, I think when will that come out? When the spring issue pop out electronically within about a month or so, or how does that happen?
Yeah, it's about a month, and then it's actually going to be a printed version too at EMS World Live, our new conference in May in Austin. So it'll be online first, and then it'll be available also at the
Good.
new conference in May.
Well, Ben puts out an article every quarter, okay, and it's been good. This is a particularly really good one. I liked it a lot, just as well done, and it was done with a couple of our pediatric EMS people too, Meg Marino and Joelle. So it was
Joel, yep.
very cool. So it was great contributions there. So which is really cool. All right, well then, thanks again, Ben, for as usual for the cool things that you do. So I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, hey Ben, so anything going on in Baltimore besides politics, right, at its best?
Sorry. Baltimore's always the case. Yeah, politics. So let's see. Our nurse navigation is still continuing. We'll be presenting at there's a state medical directors conference about that. I'm going to use that to segue into the importance of non-emergency responses. The city is also very interested in how to better leverage the opioid restitution funding. So there's a lot of now city work groups that I think, as you all mentioned, the integration between public health is so very important. So there's focused on falls and also opioid harm reduction, but nothing else to report out of Baltimore. Still working on blood.
Yeah. And then is that something good about the nurse navigation program you could present at the Eagles meeting or make it part of our discussion?
I think I submitted, yes. In addition to my favorite, critical care at the point of injury topics, this is one we could certainly talk about. Yes, but I know
what's your personal, because I'm sort of getting pressure to make the days shorter and a little bit more time with the vendors kind of thing. So I may not get everybody to give a talk, or I may just give you one talk instead of two talks or something like that. Although Chris Colwell says he demands 7 talks that he's going to give. Is that
only
right?
on Droperidol, yeah. So I could just even be in his audience and mention Droperidol. So whatever it takes. We're all part of the party, Paul. Whatever you need.
Yeah, but what would be your favorite thing? Because I always want to do what you want to present.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't. I don't even know. Nurse nav or the airway stuff is great. Trauma rest.
Okay, got
whatever
it.
pleases the group.
All right, good. All right, well, let's move on then let's just go up the road to Philadelphia. Anything to report out of there, my good friend there? My good friend.
Not really. The Secret Service agent shot himself in the leg at Philly.
Oh yeah, he's got Mrs. Biden. Was she or Dr. Biden, I should say, right? Yeah, was at the airport when this happened, when he shot himself?
Yeah, it's at Philly International. So I think that's the city's claim to fame for the day.
Yeah.
Apart from that, FIFA, and there's certainly some integration or interaction between the health department and the fire department regarding FIFA and disease surveillance. So some of the topics that you all raised already are relevant to what we're going through here in Philly with FIFA planning.
Yeah. Okay, great. Oh, it's good. Well, if we can help you anymore, let me know. And so you got to get me the scoop later on why he shot himself in the foot, cleaning the gun at the airport. So yeah, it was a little bit of an embarrassment right to the service. So, all right. So let's move on. And hey, Nick, have you heard anything about it? Did you get any inside scoops? Nick Kazi, if you're there still?
I haven't, but whether or not he was using a SIG, there is a high preponderance of negligent discharges with a specific SIG sour. So we'll leave it there. Hope everyone's well.
Okay, good. Hey, and while we got you on, Nick, anything to report? I know you had a line of duty death there. What was that situation?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And I apologize for the background noise if anyone can hear. We had a tragic line of duty death last week of a 32-year-old, 2-year veteran of the Chicago Fire Department, 4th generation Chicago firefighter, including his grandfather, who was a commissioner. It was a multi-use residential building, 3-story with a garden apartment, heavy fire, floor collapsed when he went into the flames, 80% partial and full thickness burns, and tragically deteriorated rather quickly. Leaves behind a tremendous family, including his widow, his wife, who was 8.5 months pregnant, who just delivered her baby yesterday, the date of the wake, and the funeral was scheduled for today, and it's being rescheduled to next week. Tremendous tragedy on many, many fronts. So, Chicago, otherwise, for the fire department, we have approval to begin a pre-hospital blood transfusion pilot program, likely fourth quarter 2026. As we mentioned, Auto Pulse, we are continuing to expand our use to high-rise residential commercial. Tech Rescue Medics will be operational in the next couple of months.
What kind of would you say tech rescue? Is that what you said just now?
Yep, our rescue paramedics modeled after FDNY. And then we're going to be putting video laryngoscopy service wide. So making strides tremendously, and we're working to continue building that. Thank you, Paul.
Hey, for Polk County, do you want to do something, as we talked about before, do you want to do something about, preparing for national conventions, like as a mass gathering medicine section or something like that? And/or do you want to talk about the stuff that you've been learning about right now about seeing like fire scene and hazard materials and all that kind of thing? What would be a preference? I need to get like 1 or 2 talks from you.
Yeah, happy to do. I'll reach out to you offline.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Good. I want to get that in pretty soon. That's why. All right. Well, thanks a lot. And let's see now. Let's see, Glenn. Joe, we already kind of talked about nothing's happening in Memphis or the state, etc. outside. Let's the next name on the list, I got John Jew in Portland. John, anything to report out of Portland? You always got something great going on. Are you still there, John Jew? Possible we lost him.
No, Paul. I'm still here. No, we have a No Kings rally upcoming. That's going to be a problem for our city, given the political nature of Portland. So I think we're being very cautious regarding the preparation for that.
And Dallas is not as political, let's say, as what's happened in cities like Portland or Minneapolis, etc. But they're predicting this is going to be larger than area. Yeah, so it's going to be happening in a bunch of 9 cities or more cities across the country, and they're thinking this thing's going to be a lot more heated. Let me put it that way, and larger than before, etc. Especially with us going to war, and a lot of people objecting to that, and just unhappy about things right now.
It's a shame that our politics are so emotionally based and not fact and critical thinking based. It would be such a better place if the latter were true.
So I'm going to answer the question for Mick, and then you can tidy it up with John. Mick was saying, what's the story in Portland? So about, I don't know, what was it, a half a year ago, Portland has been more of a, let's say, left-leaning, sort of more liberal type of community. And so as a result, we saw that in Chicago, which is the same thing, and various other places where the president had set in, various troops into the area, and particularly the ICE agent issues that are happening, and that became, and it turned out it wasn't a big a deal either, as John had pointed out to us in different, in the media had kind of blown it up, but there was just hypersensitivity about them being invaded there. How would you describe it, John?
Yeah, I think there was some obviously political overtones that they made a big deal out of a little deal. But for everybody else, I'm not sure the West Coast is very heavily left-leaning. But the real issue in Portland, and I have a question to the audience, is the following: that I would say the protest draws the anti-protesters in, and we have a whole bunch of anarchists as well as right-wing individuals that want to collide, and then the problem occurs. That's number one. The second one is that the No Kings protest doesn't have I would say, event permit, and there is an informal medical group, and I don't know how to handle that. Does that make sense as well? So so it's really a problem for me right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe we should get hold of, well, it's kind of too late, short notice, but Pierre dealt with that a lot. So they had the yellow vests, rallies, which was really older people saying can't raise our taxes. We only on a fixed income, and that's what they were protesting, being put in that funny position. And so, but then what happened is as it started expanding and then went into Paris, they were infiltrated by people who are extremists on either side, and it became really contentious and bad. And they actually brought their own people in, so the interaction with those medical people was really odd and it was strange, But the good news was at least that the SAMU was at least respected by all parts of the crowd. So, as opposed to, the police or whatever it might be. So, I don't know what to tell you, but it's just something you have to be aware of. I mean, and I don't know the right answer to it, except that ultimately you do have, I guess, the responsibility. You have to think in the end, they say that the patient died or the patient get take care of, it really is your responsibility in many respects. So,
Yeah.
Are there ordinances there saying that private ambulance services that you have, let's say you have overview of everything, including private ambulance services and all that in Portland? Do you have that ordinance in place?
Yes, that's true. On the other hand, it's sort of like we really had a good feel of the non-911 because they have different medical directors, but we have overall control. For Mick, the answer to Mick is the following: that Portland downtown is very heavy left leaning. In other words, on a scale 1 to 10, 5 in the middle, and left is like 0. It's about a 2 or 3 at a maximum. And so the problem that occurs is that when you have the left wing, which is really a left wing, and outside of Portland, it's really right wing. So you have like oil and water that's actually trying to mix together here as well. So
we see the same thing I see in Texas and all that. Crawford, how about on your land?
Well, I was just going to point out that Philly's been dealing with these protests for decades, and they're certainly prevalent around the various political conventions. And they do have, like all these organized sort of paid protests, do have their own medical units, and they're very eager to keep their patients, meaning their protesters, away from EMS. They're sort of like covert medical operatives, and it's just kind of part of reality, and it's very challenging to come up with some sort of formal agreement between EMS and the private medical people.
Yeah. Thanks, Crawford.
Hey, Eileen, can you tell everybody about Mark Carney, what you mean by that?
Well, Mark Carney, as most people here know, is the leader of Canada, the real leader, right? And he is I've watched him give all kinds of presentations, opinions. He gave a remarkable speech for the World Economic Press, and he takes the emotion out of it. And he is someone who talks to Canadians from sort of a shared experience, not ideological opposition. He has a profound normative power in Canada. He has undeniable administrative competence. He has administrative competence. He has this cool register, and he lowers the temperature. And that's what America needs right now. That's what the US needs right now. Somebody with those types of qualities. So yay, Canada. I wish we had a leader like you.
All right. Well, thank you for that input. That I think everybody probably here agrees to that. So, and sorry about my cats here in the background doing their thing here. So, all right, let's just jump around a little bit more, if that's okay. So one of the people I wanted to talk to here was just Mark, NLA. Anything report out of your jurisdiction?
Hey everyone, nothing too exciting here. I feel like I'm on a little bit of a treadmill. We are a couple things. The blood, we're still waiting on funding, trying to ramp that up to follow Clayton's example over in LA County. They've had a very successful program so far. We are also looking at a staffing model, and thank you to those I've reached out to. I've had a lot of good conversations with many of the Eagles here. Right now, one of the things that we're looking at is moving really to sort of an all ALS model. We've got ALS ambulances, which are 2 paramedics. We've got BLS ambulances, which are 2 EMTs. We've got assessment engines as well with 1 paramedic. We're looking basically to sort of distribute the paramedics, so there'll be more of a one-on-one kind of model. We are for pretty much all of the responses here, we're going to end up sending 2 paramedics since we're almost always going to be sending 2 resources. We do have a tiered dispatch system that can maybe, for the real minor things, just send a single ambulance resource. But as we're trying to figure out how to preserve really this level of service with decreased funding, decreased physical resources, and decreased staffing, it's really just this crazy Tetris game. So I appreciate the input from everybody who's had different models as we're trying to figure out what's going to work here in LA. So that's still a little ways off, and I'll let you know as we get closer to implementation, because I'm sure we're going to have to refine things. And then the other thing for us is just our advanced practitioner program. We're expanding operations over to LAX, where you can get a couple of positions over there. Just to be able to provide direct service, since when there's such a high non-transport rate from people having medical issues in the terminal, but don't want to so basically not miss they don't want to change their travel plans. The idea here is that we'll actually be able to deliver a little bit higher level of care on site, and maybe actually talk people into getting the care that they need if it's something higher than what the APs can deliver. And that's all we've got.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Rob Dunn, are you still on with us in Detroit? Are you entertaining us all tomorrow morning as well?
Yes, I am. I am here, and not on tomorrow. Actually, doing work at the radio station tomorrow, but not on the radio tomorrow.
Okay.
But yeah, mostly I'm listening and just admiring everybody's great projects, like Nick over there in Chicago. All those things are on our list. Some of them we've had budgeted for almost a decade without implementing them. We're very slow to implement, and we're working through a new mayoral administration. So things like our nurse navigator and all that are currently on hold while the current administration sorts out what that means. I think those of you that have dealt with leadership changes, which is most of the people, you've got to have your messaging, ready to go all over again, and get the same questions and break in the same new people with a lot of young, fresh faces in our government. But we're working through that process. Our shining light has always been our training center, and that's been terrific. And we've had some great programs going on over there. And we've got Peter coming to visit us, not too distant future.
Okay. Well, then, speaking of which, Peter, anything to report from your end?
No, I mean, as far as only thing I thought would be of interest, and maybe you mentioned it already, was all the hullabaloo on the surviving sepsis guidelines, which have come out, which are taking a beating. I'm about to publish a blog post on the pediatric side of the house, but
yes.
That's pretty much it for me.
Yeah, we had a couple of sessions on that, including the president of ACEP and then obviously
okay, good,
and all that. Yeah, a few weeks ago.
And then the other thing was it was EMS on the Hill yesterday. I'm not sure if you had someone talk about that today, but there was representatives from all the alphabet organizations, and I thought it was very, very impactful.
Okay, good. And Peter, you would have liked David had a great presentation like he did in Brevard County. And we were talking about the morale issue when you can offload the basic life support cases, to another unit and et cetera. We're starting to see that in Brevard as well. If am I wrong or right about that?
Oh my goodness, yeah. Hold on, let me see if my mic is on. Yeah. Yeah, it was not popular with the union initially. But then once the paramedics told the union, we love this, leave us alone, all of a sudden it became good.
Right. Yeah.
But Paul, you ought to call our good friend in Chicago, Nick Codsey, because they had a hospital closed in middle of Chicago yesterday. And he's dealing with
right. I heard that. I heard about it. I was actually there in Chicago yesterday. So
yeah. Oh, you were? Oh, cool.
Yeah. And I had to beat the storms out, Nick, so I got out of there in time, which is good. All right. Hey, Roger, anything from Montgomery County? I'm going to get going, and Mick, I'll come to you next, and then I want to have if you don't mind, Eileen, I want you to give a break tease, so to speak, about next week. Okay, but go ahead. Anything, Roger, to report?
Yes, yes, yes. So it's fortuitous that my predecessor on the round robin was Pete, because one of the things is that we are in beginning a transition for the infancy to the childhood stages of trying to implement an antibiotic program beyond what the state allows, which is for open fractures and ANSEF. And we do believe that the new Surviving Sepsis campaign will at least be an additional element in the literature that will allow us to get it through a statewide a statewide process that might be a little bit more skeptical. So we're working on, and our partners in it might be Queen Anne's County, Maryland, just across the Bay Bridge, has a critical care nurse that's a champion in that area. So we're in the we might be the pilot of the state in that respect for septic shock.
Yeah, we might bring this up as a topic maybe in June as well. And Peter, one of the things I want to bring up is that you don't give an antibiotic, you give 2 antibiotics, right? Generally, is that right? And can you give us your rationale for doing that?
Yeah, so we're actually in the process of converting. So we're moving now to just cefepime.
Okay.
So we were Rocephin and Gent, and now I've converted 2 of the locations to cefepime, and now we're gonna do the others. It's just
that makes sense, because some could argue against that, so that's good to know. But let's bring it up, because we got to get everybody up to date on it. Okay.
Yeah. The other thing is that puts us in the realm of looking into what Ben has been doing in Baltimore City, because Baltimore City is ahead of the rest of the state in some issues as he tries to follow us in blood. And that is, we have just had the announcement of the closure in July 1st of the Germantown Emergency Center, Maryland's first hospital-based statewide recognized 911 receiving facility that's a freestanding ED. It's closing. And so we have the challenge of figuring out, what do we do with 20,000 census, 22,000 census that's now being like nixed in an area. And so one of the things it makes us think about is thinking outside the box and how to prevent the 911 call, to prevent the 911 dispatch. So nurse navigation is very much also in our sphere of influence to consider, and we will learn a lot from Dr. Launer and Jenny in that respect. Stay tuned.
Okay.
Thank you. We will be there, and we have a contingent.
Thank you, Nick. We're over. Okay, time. So I got to move on. So Mick, anything to report out of your land? And I hope you had a great anniversary trip.
It was a great trip. We had an interesting statistical blip yesterday. There was a 4-hour period with a massive drop off in EMS and in emergency department attendances. And it turns out that over 2 million people were watching the football game last night, where Ireland were attempting to qualify for the World Cup. And unfortunately, they failed at the last hurdle. We were checkmated by the Czech team last night. So it was an all-tier response all over the place today.
God. Of course, that's too well. It was firstly for psychological depression, right?
Yeah. So Ireland will not be going to the World Cup, so you will not have to deal with all those people looking for their alcohol in public.
Yeah, okay, good. Thanks for letting us know, Mick. I don't know. I'm trying to remember if I hope I've caught everybody here. I tried my best. Eileen, you want to just really give a quick brag tease and why we're doing it? We're going to talk about ticks and mosquitoes next week, and some of the controversies. We're going to have our friends from the CDC coming along. So, want to tell us why you're doing this, or why you're going to talk about it, why everybody should be listening?
Well, yes, there's absolutely been a massive increase in vector-borne infections. Particularly, we're going to be talking about ticks, which of course is the only party crasher that arrives uninvited, clings for hours, and leaves you with an unwanted gift like Borrelia burgdorferi or anaplasmosis or Ehrlichia. And so it's an important talk. We'll make it fast-paced. We'll have plenty of good jokes for you, but it'll be a serious look at Lyme, babesiosis, anaplasmosis, and the evolving vaccine landscape. And that's what I'll focus on, old and new vaccines that have existed for Lyme in particular.
Okay, great. Then, you saw the key Lyme breakthrough, right? So the Yeah, is that look okay? By the way, the title I gave you, does that all look okay for you, by the way, for next week that I said next week and all that?
Yeah, I think so. It's a
Text
little,
on the
it's a little tricky because we're getting into Passover. So, yes, but you know, and I'll be up in New York with the family. We have our celebrations. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Well, we're just gonna do it in the morning anyways, and it should be out by get you back onto that nightly Seder or whatever it may be for that time. Okay.
Oh,
Hey,
yes.
okay. So the let's see. Well, anyways, I just wanted to tell you that's when she could do it, so I wanted to make sure you guys were in sync at that time, and so this is good. But it's getting to be a problem, and I think that it's just good for us all as human beings. So I don't know if there's an EMS angle here, but it was really important for the CDC to start talking to us about this. And the other thing was the mosquitoes issues is right up there as well. So okay, well, and maybe this is a two-parter that we move on with. All right, is it Bill? Anything from your end? And I think you're the only person I didn't talk to, right?
Yeah, Northern California is warm. We have RSV and influenza, which are very high in the Bay Area, but trending down. And we have metapneumovirus, which is very high and trending higher at this point. And if someone has a treatment for metapneumovirus other than support, let us know.
Okay. Okay, good. All right, we'll let you know, I guess. All right, so listen, let's talk about I guess that's it. So I'll just see everybody next week. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, and appreciate your help. This was a great session today. Just was what a great man Dr. Purse is. Just really privileged to call him my friend. So all right, well, listen, let you go and see you next week, everybody. And call me if you need anything. Nick, call me later if you're still on. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.